Hello, my name is Alexis Levier, and I will be presenting today on leading adults with autism. Autism affects 1 out of 85 children here in Colorado. Nationally, it affects 1 in every 68 children, with Colorado being the highest in reported diagnosis. Autism can be defined as a lifelong developmental disability that affects how a person communicates with and creates relationships with other people. It also affects how they make sense of the world around them. These are some other interesting statistics that I found about individuals who suffer with ASD within this country. More than 3.5 million Americans live with an autism spectrum disorder, also known as ASD. Autism in U.S. children increased by 119.4% from the year 2000, when it was 1 in every 150 children, to 2010, when it increased to 1 in every 68 children. This makes autism the fastest growing developmental disability in the U.S. today. Obviously, this is an issue that we need to address and is not going to go away anytime soon. In the following, I would like to give some background on some of the challenges that individuals with ASD face on a day-to-day basis. I would like to then look at the benefits gained by not only organizations, but also by our society when we incorporate this class of citizens into the workplace. Finally, I would like to address exactly how leaders can learn to effectively lead adults who suffer from ASD in the workplace. More children will be diagnosed with ASD this year than children with childhood cancer, juvenile diabetes, and pediatric AIDS combined. While ASD may not be perceived as severe as some of these other diagnoses, it does come with its own unique set of challenges for the individual who suffers from ASD. I included this because this perfectly sums up the personality of an individual who suffers from ASD. Always unique, totally interesting, sometimes mysterious. So now let's look at some of the challenges that individuals with ASD face every day. One of their main challenges that they learn to deal with is their learning capabilities. For those with ASD, sustaining attention to subjects that others find interesting or important can be extremely difficult, while at the same time, the ability to attend to something motivating to the individual with autism can maintain considerable intensity. So basically what this means is that when the individual with ASD finds a task or activity that they are interested in or excel in, these are the tasks and activities that they are going to want to perform on a day-to-day basis. If you confront them with tasks that they are unfamiliar with or know that they are not going to excel in, they are not going to give 100% of their capabilities in their position or in their tasks and duties. Communication. The inability to communicate is a frustration for any person to have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But when you compact this into an individual who suffers from ASD, it can be a quite frustrating and debilitating issue to deal with on a day-to-day basis, especially when you equate that to the workplace. When you translate all of these difficulties into the workplace, it can be difficult to give this type of individual any position that's going to require them to complete various duties and functions within their position. So these type of jobs are not going to be conducive to a good work environment for someone who suffers from ASD. So you can imagine not having the ability to communicate with someone, especially within the workplace, can be quite frustrating for someone who suffers from ASD. In fact, some children diagnosed with autism remain mute throughout their entire lives. Others may be delayed, developing language as late as age 5 to 9. Many of those who do speak often use language in unusual ways. They seem unable to combine words into meaningful sentences. Some speak only single words, while others repeat the same phrase over and over. Some children with autism even parrot what they hear, and this is a condition known as echolalia. This can be a debilitating challenge for an individual with ASD to have to deal with while dealing with the everyday difficulties that come with sustaining and holding down a job. And finally, there's the challenge of elopement. Elopement occurs when a child runs or wanders from a safe, supervised environment. Studies show that 49% of children with autism eloped after the age of 4, and of these, 53% were away from supervision long enough to be considered missing. Elopement allows those with ASD to access sensory consequences in the form of running. So basically, what elopement boils down to is when an individual with ASD becomes frustrated because they can't communicate or their learning capabilities are on a different level than everyone else that they associate with or work with, they need to get that frustration out. And sometimes this comes in the form of elopement, especially for individuals with ASD who are physically inclined. Running seems to be the best way for them to be able to release those frustrations and anxieties that they experience because of the lack of communication and the learning capabilities that they have. So elopement in the form of running is the best way for them to get out those frustrations and anxieties. So what does all of this have to do with learning how to effectively lead an adult with ASD? While this class of adults face many challenges when entering the workforce, they also bring with them some amazing qualities that can be invaluable for both society and organizations. Autism, not for wimps or the weak of heart, but for the strong, courageous, and brave-hearted. Many parents who have children who suffer from ASD like to think that their children have superpowers. And they say this because they have unique capabilities that most individuals may have, but do not hone in on and utilize the way individuals with ASD can and will. So now let's look at some of the benefits that are associated with having someone who suffers from ASD, maybe in our society or even in our workplaces. For our society, that may mean their musical abilities or interests, their artistic abilities, which can be very high, and their honesty. These are just a few of the traits that individuals with ASD possess, and they do not sway far from their set patterns and ideals. These are traits that most members of our society value and admire in those that they associate with, or would even look to hire and be a successful member of their company or organization. Organizational benefits. Individuals with ASD have the ability to understand and retain concrete concepts, rules, sequences, and patterns. This can be a great asset for a lot of different engineering companies, especially. Intense concentration or focus, especially on a preferred activity, as we discussed previously. Problem-solving ability. Well, if you think about it, most people would think that individuals with ASD would not have great problem-solving abilities, but they do, especially when they have to deal with the lack of communication that they experience as a result of their diagnoses. When you can't ask for something that you want, you get pretty creative about getting it yourself or using other means to find ways to have a solution to the problem. They also have long-term memory, which can also be a really great asset for any organization. Individuals with ASD possess unusual skills and exceptional abilities that make them unique and interesting. Often, the unique talents of people with autism are a reflection of the focus they place on a particular area and how much it interests them. So basically, this goes back to the fact that individuals with ASD are going to excel in positions and jobs that involve work that interests them, something that they are passionate about, something that they excel in and are good in, are going to be activities that they're going to want to complete because they feel confident. And anytime an individual with ASD is confident in what they are doing, it's a good day for everybody. Once someone with ASD becomes fixated or focused on a task, it's difficult to get them to transition into focusing their attention onto something else. Now, in some positions, this can be a really great trait and could be a really great asset to an organization, especially if they want that intense fixation and focus on a required task that needs to be completed. So, now let's examine how to incorporate these beneficial qualities into an actual workplace in which adults with ASD can not only contribute to an organization, but can also thrive in their positions and in their careers. Having a meaningful job adds purpose. It enriches a person's life and their experiences. There is no reason why this opportunity should be withheld from adults who suffer from ASD. They want the same opportunities and chances that every other individual has the chance to obtain. Autism, and I wanted to point out why this is important to incorporate this class of individuals into the workforce. And that would be because autism services cost U.S. citizens $236 to $262 billion annually. A majority of those costs are in adult services. $175 to $196 billion are committed to adults with ASD as compared to the $61 to $66 billion that are contributed to ASD children. Obviously, this is a huge disparity, and these costs can be avoided if we were to incorporate these individuals into the workforce at a more increasing rate. Only 19.3% of people with disabilities in the U.S. were working or seeking work in the labor force. Of those, 12.9% were unemployed, meaning in actuality only 6.4% of adults in the population with disabilities are actually employed and working on a daily basis. Those are horrible numbers. That needs to change. How do we change it? Leader-member exchange theory. The leader-member exchange theory is a relationship-based approach to leadership. It suggests that leaders develop an exchange with each of their subordinates, and that the quality of those leader-member exchange relationships influence subordinates' responsibility, decisions, and access to resource and performance. So basically, this theory is what is going to be the best situation for an individual who suffers with ASD as far as entering the workforce. If they're able to establish a relationship of trust with their supervisors, leaders, co-workers, and peers, that is going to help them be the best that they absolutely can be in that environment. That means committing 100% of their capabilities to their everyday functions and tasks, being a star employee, and excelling in their positions and whatever functions and tasks that may include. Those who suffer from ASD often need to establish a strong relationship of trust in order to perform to the best of their abilities. If there isn't some type of connection or trust with the individuals that they work with, a person who suffers from ASD is not going to give their all in that job. In fact, they may even come to really be frustrated and unhappy with that type of job because they feel that their needs are not being met and that their coworkers and employers don't understand them. And that can be a frustration, of course, in itself. So then that leads to conducive work environments. ASD individuals can be very loyal employees if they find a job they are passionate about. They take comfort in their routines, so seek jobs that involve repetitive or detail-oriented work. This could be jobs such as janitorial work, working on an assembly line where they are tasked with doing basically the same thing over and over and over throughout their day. Those are the type of jobs that are going to be the best jobs for individuals who suffer with ASD because they're able to know what their job is, clearly define it, and perform it on a daily basis. A conducive work environment for an individual who suffers with ASD would look like somewhere where they provide clear written instructions and structure. Structure is so important for individuals who suffer from ASD. Structure and routines, they live by them. If they do not have a set path for their day, they are not going to excel. In fact, they are probably going to elope and wander off because they are not focused enough to stay within that position. Also, they are going to be frustrated because those around them are not going to be able to understand their needs and wants. They're not going to be able to communicate their thoughts and ideas. And in this case, that's going to lead to higher elopement and obviously a higher rate of unemployment in individuals who suffer from ASD. Provide opportunities for written rather than spoken words. Obviously, communication is a large barrier for individuals who suffer from ASD. So anytime you're able to provide them with written communication as opposed to verbal or visual communication, that's the best thing for them. When they're able to reference something, look at it, and interpret it whichever is best for them, then they're going to be able to really excel in that work environment. Autism-friendly facilities. Individuals who have ASD also suffer from sensory sensitivity, basically meaning that bright lights, loud noises, confusing facilities are not going to be conducive work environments for individuals who suffer from ASD. They would be more inclined to dim lighting, a very clear set out facility with not a lot of different turns and twists and doors and hallways. Those type of facilities are not going to be conducive to a good work environment for an individual who suffers from ASD. Creating the right work environment for those who suffer from ASD will allow the employer to take advantage of all the qualities and gifts that they can provide. Giving them the opportunity to excel within the workplace and providing them with an environment that encourages that is going to be the best fit for an individual with ASD. So, hopefully now it is clear that adults who suffer from this disability are a growing class that must be considered in the future of our society. I am ready to enact leadership in this field of study, and you can too. ASD diagnoses are increasing at an alarming rate throughout this country, and it is not a diagnosis that is going to go away anytime soon. The individuals who suffer from this disability want the opportunity to experience life just like anyone else, and they should be afforded that chance. The first step in making this happen is having the ability to maintain a job and gain their independence. It is time for us as a society to embrace these individuals and allow them the chance to contribute their talents within the workplace. This is my son, TJ. This is a topic that I personally take very seriously. It is my goal to ensure that my son and every other child who suffers from ASD know that they will have the chance to have a successful, contributing, and independent life. They will be a member of society just like any other individual. This disability does not have to be their downfall, and it does not have to hold them back. If we take the necessary steps to incorporate these individuals into our society now, we will all benefit in the end. I would like to leave you with a quote about individuals with ASD. This quote profoundly sums up what I have presented today. If they can't learn the way we teach the way that they learn. Thank you.